Dear learners, welcome back to another session of research methodology for tourism and hospitality management. Now, let us enter into another area that is related to quantitative research. In this unit, we will be covering research process in the beginning. We will continue with exploratory research, we will see descriptive research and end with explanatory research with some examples. The research process involves a number of steps. While you are entering into your dissertation stage, you might be looking for a subject, an appropriate subject, and your supervisor, the teacher who is assigned to guide you, may suggest you also some alternative topics. So, these topics, while going through the content, you can understand you should use quantitative techniques or qualitative techniques. If the area of study involves the representation of numbers or it deals with statistics, in prima facie at the very beginning stage you can understand you are looking forward towards quantitative research. The first part is exploration. Under exploration, make sure you have a research question. So, the research question normally comes with the words what, why, how. These three words we can find common in most of the statements, problem statements and followed by research questions. So, first one is you should have a research question, a proper research question, and the second phase is literature review. You will be going through the research literature to clarify the areas and also identify the research gap. So, what is a research gap? The term appears to be very easy, but it is not like that. Research gap can be identified after a thorough review of literature sources. So, if we have different type of research gaps in terms of methodology or in terms of data, in terms of theory, in terms of respondents or in terms of the frameworks and geographical area the research is conducted. So, the first task of the researcher is to identify research gap, and how this is possible? Research gap is identified through review of literature, and for every quantitative research we look for a theory. It is not mandatory, but a theoretical background will help you to frame your study in a proper way, and theory is mandatory for most of the analytical studies. In the case of exploratory, it may not be necessary, but when we are entering into the advanced phase of research, theoretical backgrounds are strongly recommended and it is required to. In the second phase, we have research design to work out on, making your research operational, that is meant by operationalization. And what are the methods that you follow? The strategy of collecting the data, that includes sampling. So, research design you might be remembering, I discussed this in the very first unit, that is Mark Saunders, he has given a diagram which represents a research onion from research philosophy to the data collection. A sequence of steps are involved in it. So, we have to figure out what design is used in our study. Let me just remind you, you might be remembering research philosophy, epistemology, ontology, and we use the term positivism, realism, and after philosophical backgrounds we look for whether it is a cross sectional study or a longitudinal study. Then we again look for what kind of methods are required, whether it is mono method or multi method. then we look for the respondents where we can fix the sample frame and collecting the data. So, at the final stage is data collection. So, these particular stages are covered under research design. The next phase is dealing with execution of your work, that include conducting a pilot study, that we call pilot testing. That means you take a small sample, and this small sample where you go ahead with the study, distribute the questionnaire. When you get the data, you analyze it and how the result is coming up. If the result is coming in the same way that you expected, then you can carry on with the study, and finally once the study is over, you make the report. So, these all 4 steps in brief we can say research process. And I have quoted Anmol Bhattacharya, who is an Indian author who authored a book, Research Methodology. If this book is available in your library, you may go through it. It will be easy to understand what I am discussing here today. Let us go with exploratory study. Exploratory study in a way, the term itself indicates explore. First time you are bringing out some insight on a phenomena, and it is intended to identify some kind of a happening, the ground realities through your research, that we can say exploratory research. So, first aspect is to identify the magnitude of the problem, then developing initial ideas, and next test the feasibility for more studies in that area, and your results will answer most probably the questions starts with the word what, where or when of a phenomena. So, dear learners, in the initial stage, being a graduate student, you can conduct an exploratory study, and when you make a project with the help of your teacher, that you are not aware of the ground reality or what is happening on the ground. So, the data that you are bringing, that will give an outcome, and that outcome will tell you about the what, where, when, such questions answers. So, the process include conducting the study, that is I am specifying here tourism and hospitality research. So, when we talk about a geographical area, we have tourist sites, and that could be spread in a district or 2 or 3 districts, or it could be a state or 2 or 3 states, or even pan India. So, what is the next phase then? You have to design a questionnaire, and this questionnaire is in general deal with the specific problem, and it is not necessary to use a scale to conduct an exploratory study. I will explain you what is a scale in the coming videos. So, then conduct a pilot study. Pilot study means selecting a small sample, distributing the questionnaire, getting the answers and verifying it, and your expectation, the results are matching, then you can carry out with further study. If you want to make some correction in the questionnaire, pilot study will help you to make necessary changes. Then carry out the final survey, analyze the results when you get the data collection completed, then report the findings. So, these are the process involved in conducting the study. So, now let me explain with a small example from tourism and hospitality area. One destination, you may call it any X, Y or Z. Assessment of tourism resources. So, in many dissertation titles, we can see the word assessment or potentials. Then some title end with exploratory study. So, here I have taken an example that assessment of tourism potential of a hill station that is spread over Western Ghats in Kerala. So, here we can understand that hill station, the elevation wise it is little higher, and there would be very good weather conditions. That weather conditions and natural beauty attract visitors. So, identifying the basic information, that is what kind of resources that attract visitors and making it in a quantifiable way, that is the final outcome of this study. So, let me give you the hypothetical result of this study. I am just assuming that, for example, I am taking Munnar, one of the very popular hill station in Kerala. Most of the tour itineraries include Munnar. It has tea plantations, it has lake, and it is blessed with a very good weather, and the scenic beauty is incredible. So, my parameters, I do not have any clear cut idea how to conduct the study. So, what I want to explore, in my mind I have points like one is good climate, and number 2 is scenic beauty, and number 3 is the food, local food, and number 4 is plantations, tea plantations, right. So, I am identifying all possible resources and which one the tourist prefers more. So, I can do a ranking. I prefer the tea plantations as number 1, or I prefer the lake as number 2, right. The way we can do ranking, or we can ask them, out of the 5 given topics which you like most, why do you like that, okay, with a specific answers. So, at the end of the survey you get an idea which you can present in the form of percentage, that is frequency distribution, or you can present in the form of the maximum opinion favors to which attribute. You can take average, or you can also identify standard deviation. So, the results will give you an outcome. If you surveyed 1000 people, imagine that 60% of people like the weather conditions, that is a good number. So, you are ending with numbers, and that is outcome of exploratory study. Here I would like to quote the next one, that is descriptive research. In descriptive research, what we document is the observations that we make. Occasionally we find descriptive researches in our dissertations. So, most of the dissertations which describe certain aspects, and that description is normally dealing with the small tables that again come out with the profiling of tourists or certain aspects of tourism development, the nature of services, or interpreting the tourist feedback, how tourists give their reviews on a particular service. So, this is described without going with any advanced statistical tools. Let us again underline here, if we conduct a profiling, profile of the people or profile of tourist, or we can find out the trends, what kind of trends are going on, describing the trends, and description of tourism services. It is not that like you describe by paragraph, we have to come out with at the end certain numbers. Find here an example. I made a tentative questionnaire. The study which we conduct is on profiling of tourists. This kind of questionnaires normally you get when we go to tourist site, or even if you visit a shopping mall. So, what they ask, one aspect is age, and second one is gender, nationality, educational qualifications, then your nativity or your residing, where you are residing. And if we take specifically tourism, we can ask whether is a first time visit or they are visiting repeated. This is a repeat visit. The purpose of visit may be for religious or leisure, visiting friends and relatives, or shopping, a number of options that you can give, and the places visited, number of days stayed in that destination, amount of money that you spent. So, this kind of information give you a detailed narrative of the tourist who are visiting a site. So, this particular example give you an idea of profiling tourist. So, when you take information from tourist, you can group this information and you can come out with a specific understanding of each items that you asked in this questionnaire. The next type of research is explanatory research. Explanation means we have to identify why or how a particular phenomena is perceived. So, why and how that leads to certain association or relationship. So, here I highlight a term called variables. Now, we have to break down the questions in such a form that we can measure it, small units. That units describe what kind of variation is there in one particular term. So, slowly we are advancing our learning to the next phase, that is explanatory research. Another term I want to use here is causal relationship. You must have heard about one aspect may influence the other side. Say for example, we hear cyclones happening. So, when the cyclone comes, you find rain and also wind, the storm that may even shut down an airport. So, we can understand climate plays an important role in tourism. So, we are trying to identify the relationship here. So, learners, let us understand that explanatory research uses hypothesis and a background of theory is mandated as explained by many researchers, so that at the end we can test a theory and that theory is applicable, then we can accept it in our context or refute a theory. So, we will see this particular case with an example. You might be using Google Pay or Paytm, any other form of e-wallet. I believe that your age, that could be a generation C, you are a representative of millennial or generation C. I do not know where you come from, you may be coming from an urban area or a rural area. So, here you must have understood a few things. One is e-wallet, which I told, second one is the generation that you represent, and the third one is the area that you come from. In the last slide I told you about variables. Now, we have got the variables, that is either urban or rural area. Then second, youth, generation C or millennial represent the youth, and the third aspect is e-wallet usage. Are you using e-wallet or not? So, hypothesis is, I am just assuming that there is no difference between the youth of urban or rural area on e-wallet usage. I am just floating it as a kind of hypothetical example. Now, you identify it with yourself. How much money that you spend through e-wallet when you go for shopping or when you go for any ticket booking, hotel booking, etc. My recent example in Rajasthan, where even we pay for a cup of tea using Google Pay. That means eval is so popular even in remote areas. How we can come out with a result? I am conducting a survey, and this survey may be taken up in a particular state, any state in India, any province or any part of the world. Then the urban and rural youth representative form, I believe that 50% of my population should be from urban area and 50% from rural area. Then when I analyze the result, I can find that a proportion, what proportion of youth from urban area use e-wallet, or what proportion of people from rural area they use e-wallet. So, if slowly you think in this way, your research is going to the direction of explanatory research. And here I have not mentioned any theory. When you look for theoretical background, business researchers give you a number of theories you can associate it with the findings. I wish to also give you another example. In this case, you must have heard about airport introduced DigiYatra application. DigiYatra is a mobile application, and it is easy for passengers who use airports like Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Varanasi. Several airports introduce this facility. How it helps you? If you have DigiYatra, you can upload your boarding pass, link it with your identity card, that is UID. So, when you enter into the gate, airport gate, from the entry to the security, you may only use this mobile application, so that you do not have to stand in a long queue. So, here I break down. One is there is a use of this application, and second is I perceive that this application is easy to use. So, let us come to the hypothetical question. So, first is usage I identified. After I use, I am satisfied or not. Remember, standing in a queue people do not like, and in airports, especially in security gate or entrance gate, there is a long queue that we find during the seasons. So, what extent this DigiYatra application helps the passengers, and is it satisfactory? When we analyze, we can find the result. I initiated a study to identify the perceived use and the easiness of using DigiYatra. The study is ongoing, it is not yet completed. So, I am unable to give you an answer at this point of time. It is again an analytical study. So, dear learners, now I have given you three different types of researches: exploratory, it is comparatively easy; descriptive, the little advanced one, a slightly advanced version which you can try in your PG dissertation; analytical research, if you have interest in testing a theory or going with advanced statistical techniques; explanatory researches will be highly interesting. Let us now enter into conclusion. So, research process that involves broader areas, that includes exploring, that includes the topic identification, identifying the research question, identifying the theory, completing the review of literature, then comes the research design, then comes the execution of the study, and finally writing the report. Then three types of study we went in detail. We discussed descriptive research in detail, and finally we ended up with explanatory researches. So, now when you work for your dissertation, hope this lecture would be useful for you. If you need any help or assistance, get back to me. Thank you.